Welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 190. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined, as always, by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Kyle. How's your weekend been?
It's been pretty good. I got my handy-dandy Snapple Apple here with
Ooh.
me. This is a interesting apple juice because it actually tastes like the skin, like it has the whole flavor in there. It's interesting. Science is weird. I don't understand how they do it, but oh well. If you guys did not know, here at the review show each week we have a different story to talk about. Could be a manga, could be a comic book, could be a movie, a TV show, all sorts of stuff. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and talk about it. This week we're tackling a mini-series, a 4-part mini-series. See, I can say 4-part, not for issue. I've been saying issues whenever I meant episodes.
This is progress.
Yeah. 4-part mini-series on HBO Max called The Landscapers. And it's based on true events, a real true crime. And it's about a couple, Susan and Chris Edwards, who supposedly murdered Susan's parents, buried them in the backyard, and then covered it up for 15 years. And then eventually kind of turned themselves in and was hoping that they could maintain the fact that they didn't do it by memorizing their stories and stuff like that. And I think they've been convicted of at least 25 years, or they've been sentenced, not convicted of. They've been sentenced to, I think, at least 25 years is what the program said. They're still in jail now, and they still claim that they are innocent. Didn't do it. So Landscapers. So I pitched...
Not the Landscapers.
Right. Exactly.
Make sure it's
just
clear.
Landscapers.
We were confused for quite a bit.
So I had heard of this one on another podcast. I mean, I saw it on HBO Max, but it was one that was just like, I'm not like, just by that picture, it was just like, I don't need to watch that and stuff like that.
I was sold on the picture alone. This was one of those titles that I would have pitched to you if you didn't pitch to me first.
Interesting. Because I saw it a bunch on HBO Max and just kept skipping over it. And then I heard about it on a podcast, but what I had heard was very minimal. It was just like, yeah, it's real short. There's only 4 of them. And it's a great example of a show that just like keeps getting more and more bonkers, like as it progresses. And so I ended up watching the trailer as I was looking for things to pitch, and the trailer for the show was incredible. That was the thing that sold me. That was just like, oh my God, this looks awesome. Let's watch this. And yeah, it looked like they were playing with reality in a weird way, and just like what you as a viewer can see, but they can't. But it's in their head. They're thinking it, or this or that. Yeah, it's just all like. The way it seemed like they were filming this was going to be really creative. And so I was like, yes, we need to check this out. But I guess you had you seen this before I mentioned it?
No. I just saw that splash page on HBO Max, and it's like true crime miniseries starring Olivia Colman and David Thewlis. And I'm like, that's it. I don't need more details than that. You've already got me.
There you go. Yeah. I guess I'm not as familiar with their work. I'm more familiar with Olivia Colman. I don't know off the top of my head what I've seen her in, but once I saw her, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen her and stuff.
But I think I've only seen David Thewlis play Professor Remus Lupin and the bad guy from Wonder Woman. But
Okay.
I found him to be trustworthy, and I wanted to see him playing a possible criminal in quaint England.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So yeah, I mean that's kind of the synopsis is it's like a dramatization of the events of this couple turning themselves in and then being interrogated and stuff like that on what is happening or what happened on that night 15 years prior, and them going to court eventually and losing. Um, yeah, I would say go check it out. I enjoyed this a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I kind of wish there was more of it. Like I feel like another episode or two maybe would have
Mm.
done it good. Not like I felt like they told the story great. Like I don't have complaints about that. I just some of the things that the trailer showed me that was happening, I kind of want more of that. like
Yeah.
like is which is I feel like that's a weird thing to say because it's so vague on like what exactly I want. It's just like I want more creative stuff, please. Like do more of this like fourth wall breaking,
Yeah.
reality merging. Like do that stuff. That's what I want. Like what is happening in these characters' heads? Um, that's what I want to see more of. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was
that's
good.
a real
I
strength of
enjoyed
this
this.
series. You would describe this to me as a show that looked like it was using methods of a stage play in live
Yeah,
theater, which always excites me. For example, there is one scene where the detectives are interrogating Susan and they start to tell her how they believe the crime happened. And then they just stand up, the walls fall away behind them, and they pull her out and they walk her over to another physical stage. And there's
yeah,
David Thewlis there going like, okay, where do you want me to stand? How do you want me to hold the gun? And it is like
it's so
they're
cool.
taking they're taking the metaphorical reenactment. If we're going to tell you how we think this crime went into we're pulling you along on a full physical reenactment
Yeah,
where we act like we're not even in an interrogation room anymore. We are on a series of sets on a sound stage. It's a show that's very aware of itself as a show in an interesting way.
yeah, very much so. Um, yeah, I mean, like if you enjoy true crime, I think this is an interesting case.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you just want something different to watch, that's not a huge commitment, right? Uh, this is a great because it's a mini series. You can get it
Yeah.
done in a night or two nights or 4 nights. You know, if you just watch one each
Yeah,
night, which is
yeah.
what I did. Just watched one each night and then
Yeah, and
was done.
most of the episodes are closer to the 45-minute mark than the hour mark.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, very efficient.
I enjoyed the performances a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting how a lot of true crimes, they're true crime stories and podcasts and stuff like that, can try to bring you on their side. Like they've investigated the case and they've come up with their own conclusions, and
Yeah.
they want to convince you to join their side, right? Or to believe certain characters or not. And I thought this show did a great job of kind of staying away from that, to be like, hey, we're not really going to tell you what if we believe they did it or not.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to kind of show you the story and maybe more so focus on the character relationships, or the relationship between Susan and Chris and what that meant
Mm-hmm.
to them in the midst of this, which I thought was an interesting angle to take, that told the story effectively but also was just like, well, make up your own mind, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's very open ended. We know, of course, that in real life they were convicted. The British court system found sufficient evidence to convict them for the murder in the way that they think it happened. but we never get like a flashback to that. We truly don't know what really happened at the end of this series. And I appreciate that it leans into how messy the entire thing was in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's all kind of spoiler free.
Yeah.
I mean, that we it's real life, so it also like there is no such thing as spoilers. We've kind of already spoiled it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all I have to say here in this first bit.
I also want to say I was surprised that they weren't literal landscapers. I thought that was literal. I thought they truly worked as gardeners, and they do not. That title refers to them burying the bodies.
Indeed. Indeed. All right, we will take a quick break for some housekeeping, and then after that, we'll get into spoilers and start diving into the show a little bit more in depth. Start digging down and getting to the roots of the landscapers.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be right back. We put a lot of hard work into the shows that we make, and yes, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts, and we'd love it if you would check them all out. You can find out more information on our website at thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in the Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. If you want to support what we do here at The Whatnauts, patreon.com/The Whatnauts is the best place to do that. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of exclusive content at the $3 tier. You can also get a shout out and thank you on all of our shows at the $5 tier. You can support us on Twitch by subscribing to our channel at twitch.tv/The Whatnauts, and we would love to have you all join us for our live streams and talk with us in the chat. And lastly, we have merch. If you want to grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a mug or something else, go to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. And we are back. A big shout out to our Patreon supporters, especially those at the $5 tier. Thank you so much to Sam. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you. Cool things that we have been doing here at the Whatnauts. We just recorded our Patreon exclusive show for this month. It is our 2022 video game fantasy draft. We brought on a guest to join us this time, so we'll be checking in on that throughout the year. But that should be up on our website very soon. You guys can use your Patreon credentials to sign in to our members section of the website and get access to all of our exclusive content that we've ever made. So there you go. Let's see. We also, still in video game news, Microsoft just bought Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, which is ginormous. It is like the only news thing that happened this week, and it is wild. So
68 billion?
68 billion, yes.
There's not that many of anything. Are you sure it's not 6.8 billion or 68 million?
It was 68.7 billion. Yep.
Nobody has that much money. I don't think that's not true.
Jim Microsoft does. Jim Microsoft himself has it. Yeah. But yeah, so we talked all about that on crossplay. On the captain's log this past week, we found out some interesting facts about George Jetson that blew our minds. So go check that one out and find. You won't believe what this podcast has to say about George Jetson. Yeah, good stuff. It was fun. We had a blast. And let's see, last but not least, we did our season 1 spoiler cast on Yellow Jackets on the Reactor feed, so you guys can go check that out. That was a lot of fun. I'm so excited about that show. Season 2 cannot get here fast enough. I need it like yesterday. But yeah, that was good fun too. So that's up on their respective podcast feeds. It's all up on YouTube. You guys can go find all of that stuff. But that said, I think it is time we get into spoilers. Here we are. Spoilers.
I want to say, I think it's great that we watched it. We watched the show this week in particular, because last week I tried to give you a selection of Westerns and we watched The Power of the Dog, which is Western in setting, but not necessarily in plot, in tropes.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we get to this show, which is a true crime mystery where our criminals have an obsession with Western films and they imagine themselves in these films. Like, oh, here it is. This is what I was trying to get last week.
Yeah. Yeah, or at least this is how she kind of sees things. He was never as much into the movies, but then got into it because of his life. But yeah, it's like you said, they just imagine themselves as outlaws on the run, or heroes that come to town and will kind of set things right. And yeah, it's that, like, that is what interested me about this show is what is like just wondering all the different ways that this show is going to break reality and be like, okay, this is how they thought it went down, or this is how they thought it went down, but styled as a Western, or styled as this, or here's a scene when they're in the interrogation room, and yeah, you have like a two-way mirror, so you're not supposed to see in, but it's doing a thing where like maybe the inspector asks them a question and they say something, and then they just kind of sit there and wait as like the lighting changes in the room back there so we can see them, and then they say something like it's supposed to be happening at the same time, but it's not just so we can understand it. Like I was interested in that stuff. Like how is this just gonna mess with reality, or help me to understand it better because of the techniques that they're employing. And I was not disappointed at all. This weaves back and forth from like old movies and lighting and black and white to color to now it's an old Western, and now they move from this one set to this next set by literally walking, and you can see all the like the extras and the camera crew and all that stuff as they like transition to this next. That stuff was so cool. And that is the thing that I want more of. Like there was not enough of that in this show, which I also do have to admit, I can see how it could potentially be distracting, right? And they don't want to do it too much to take away from the story. But man, it was so cool. It was so cool.
It was. This is stylistically and technically one of the most impressive shows I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it starts small in episode 1, which is largely just Susan and Susan and Christopher by themselves in France, where they've gone to live after, I don't know, like they're moving on to a new life. Nobody knows about Susan's parents who they buried, so they're not exactly running from something. But you can imagine that they just need to get out of the space that they were in, so they're struggling to make a new life there in France. And Susan's got this little, like, I don't know, 14-inch, like, VCR TV that she's watching in their bedroom. And she's watching some old Western, and the shots of it are her sitting in their four-poster bed, and the TV is, like, projected across, like, the entire wall. Like, we get the cross shot to just, like, this little dinky TV, and then we get the shot to her, and it's, like, the image of the TV fills and lights up the entire room. It's, like, projected over her body, over her bed, over that wall, which is a very theatrical thing to do. You would see that, like, in a stage production. And then when Chris calls his stepmom and sort of inadvertently confesses to her, like, hey, we could use some money. We're doing okay. We're just sorting things out. We did bury 2 bodies. It's not as bad as it sounds. I really hope you know it's not as bad as it sounds. There's a shot of her when she, like, calls the police where she is, like, she's in darkness with like one light from above, like she is spotlit, and it's just for like one brief shot, but it also feels like something you took out of a stage production. So there's little elements like that in the first episode that keeps growing until we get to episode 3, where the sets are completely broken down. And you get to episode 4, where we spend maybe like 10 minutes worth of screen time in this alternate Western film. It's very cinematically shot Western film where everybody's in costume. The detectives are like the sheriffs of this town.
Western town set.
Yeah, yes.
That is what is amazing to me is, for as little screen time as it got, they have a whole set, just like mud streets and wooden buildings. Like, I'm sure some of that is like fake. It's just like the exterior, right? You don't have the full buildings, but still, it's just like they went all out. Holy shit. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, they went to a lot of lengths to craft even the smallest things for this show. And I can imagine they maybe saved money with like the set breaking down scene. That's probably just in the studio they're already in. That's Pinewood or something. I don't know. And you would see that over the end credits of the show. The end credits would play, if it's not true audio from news programs, then it's certainly mocked up to feel very much like audio taken from news programs. The newscaster being like, Susan and Christopher Edwards have been accused of murdering Susan's parents almost 15 years ago. It's all that. You see a shot of the actual Susan and Christopher, and they do look so much like these actors. I didn't realize they were styled to be that close to the original people. And you see the tech crew like setting up and breaking down sets, and you think this is just another look behind the scenes, that this is what the end credits and this like little box next to the actual scrolling credits is giving you. Like, here's some behind this, here's actual news broadcasts, here's photos of the actual criminals we're basing this on, here's photos of how we constructed our sets. And then you get to that episode and it's like, oh, that was less, that's literally behind the scenes, but also representative of what is actually happening within the fiction of the show itself.
Yeah, they're just slowly starting to break down, and they're still maintaining that, like, hey, we didn't do this, right? As they are still on a set, but it is maybe not the set that they thought it was, or the set that they wanted, right? So and it's that like bulging rectangle that looks like those old tube TVs, right? That she's watching. It just there's so much like little details in this, both literal and metaphorical, that is just like what they do with every bit of this show is just fantastic. God, like I just to see, like it's interesting because I feel like the characters themselves, at least how the actors represented them, they are just the nicest, most quaint, but like when he emails the police, like the police are upset that, like, this guy's so freaking nice, like he's so polite, like what is
this? Is this a mind game?
Right, yeah. They're like upset and like, is this a clue? But it's just like, they really are. Like, she just seems like the most quaint, like, and she has the most pleasant smile, right? It's just like they're adorable. Like, like you they reminded me just for that.
They reminded me a lot of these older neighbors who live in my building, and I'll help them out, like running errands for them, taking their rent check up to the office because they don't drive anymore. I'll get their groceries. Yeah, Susan in particular reminded me a lot of my neighbor, except instead of being in a Gary Cooper, her obsession is Donny Osmond.
It's always someone.
Right. So the fact that she's got an older celebrity she's obsessed with, like, felt true to life for me. Like, I know an old lady exactly like this.
That's awesome. Yeah, they the performances of them were spectacular. I just like to feel the anger and the upset when the like the first within the first 5 minutes, and they like you're just getting to know them. They seem happy, they seem quaint, and then he goes to that interview at the bank.
Oh,
And he's just like they're speaking French just 3,000 miles a minute, and he's struggling to just understand what the question was. And then it cuts to him just like after the interview, he's walking back home or something, and he just takes his bag and shoves it. And he just that alone is like, oh, like these guys are in like a dire situation here. Like it's not all sunshine and rainbows like the scene just 2 minutes ago might lead you to think. Like these guys are kind of in a jam here. And it's
something I noticed is that I think some of the people who are waiting in that waiting room with him for that job interview are in the jury later. And you see them like standing in a field as observers during the scene where he's like, it's like a flashback or an imagining of him back at the gun range. I'd like to watch the show again, not right away. It's a very good show, but it is also heavy stuff. It is emotionally harrowing. It is tragic. But in years to come, I'd like to watch the show again and watch these background players, because I think there is like a set cast that they repeat. Also, like a stage production, like we've got our background players. There's not different people in the job interview that are in the jury. Like we're just going to cast one person and like repeat them 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't pick up on that. But that would make sense, right? That they were just repeating these extras. But then I think that also adds to it, now that I think about it, as like, I mean, it's supposed to be what a jury of your peers, right? So it's here's the people that was at the job interview, here's the people that were at the gun range, and they are your jurors, right? They are the ones that are gonna decide your fate and stuff like that. So yeah, yikes.
Yeah. Even in very small details, I think the show has a lot of thought in it. After the entire trial, at the end of the 4th episode, you spend like a minute just watching a custodial worker clean up the empty courtroom. There's just somebody there with a cart filled with brooms and soap, just vacuuming the entire place. Well, you like hear, I think you hear voiceover from some other part of the narrative. You're there for like a minute, and it's this mirror to after a crime, you clean up the crime scene. Of course you do. And the method with which they cleaned it and disposed of the bodies is a large part of the story. But even after an act of justice, after being in a courtroom, after settling a case, after you've convicted the criminals for this murder that they've committed, that is also an act that requires cleaning up afterwards. No matter what, good or bad, no matter what you're trying to do, there's an element of mess to it. There's always somebody who follows up to tidy the place up.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to talk about the cops, the detectives in the show, because I really liked the stuff that they started to show. Like this is also kind of why I want the show to be longer, because I felt like the detectives were just kind of underserved. Like the little bits that we do get of them, it's like, this is fantastic. Like I want to know more of this. And
they do feel like they're from an entire television show. Like this is a true crime story that it's just being dropped into an ongoing BBC crime dramedy.
Yeah. Like God, I loved the scene when I think it's when they first found out that they were gonna turn themselves in, and the like head detective guy like storms off, and then he stops and goes, "I'm gonna get a sandwich," and then walks away. like, I'll be back in 10. Like that, and then just to see like to see the intimidation tactics that the detectives are taking, and that as a viewer of this show, like of course they would try and pit them against one another. Oh, well, he said this. Like, why do you think he's
Mm-hmm.
saying this, but you're not? Is he leaving you behind? Did he really love you? Did you really love him? Like all that stuff. And you can see the effect that it's having on the detective. I don't remember her name. Let me look it up here.
I
I
think it's
have the Wikipedia.
Lansing. And then the partner she's with most of the
Yes.
time, I think his name's Wilkie.
Emma Lansing and Paul Wilkie were the two main detectives, and then they had their boss up above them. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she like just when she's starting to find out the trauma that Susan went through as a child, and I think as we start to then understand, oh, this is why she likes the movies. It's escapism for her. It's a
Yeah.
world where she can get away from all of that, and she has found that as her safe space. The detective is now kind of discovering that in her own way, maybe not with the
Mm-hmm.
movies, but is discovering, oh, this is why she's so like the relationship between her and Chris is so tight, because she has
Mm-hmm.
retreated from her parents into him, and she's seeing like all of that relationship, and it reminds her of the bad stuff that she said to her dad, and goes to like we don't see them meet, but we
Mm-hmm.
see the phone call, and she says like
Yeah.
hi dad, and then you hear on the opposite end of just like, oh, this is a surprise, and like that's
Yeah.
basically all you hear, and it's just this like nice touch there, but I want more of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I
Like that
think
was such a good scene.
I really liked that touch that Susan is revealing such seriously traumatic, abusive stories of her past. And her, this detective had a father who was a drunk and seemed like he maybe threw a punch a couple times, but in the grand scheme of things, when she looks at Susan, she's like, "Oh, my dad was not that bad. Like I still want my dad to be in my life." And so she like mentions she hasn't talked to him in years. Yeah, and then after her discussion with Susan, she goes and calls him to say, just reconnect with him. I guess in a moment of gratitude for,
Yeah.
you're not the best dad, but I know how much worse things could have been.
Yeah. And then we get that one final detail about all of that, is that she basically told him to fuck off when she was 12, and
Yeah.
she said her words were something along the lines of like, hey, if you do this again, I'll chop off your
Yeah.
head. And so it is this like this real threat of violence from a 12-year-old that makes him lay. But yeah, it's just like what she said is arguably more violent than what Susan and Chris maybe did to her parents
Mm-hmm.
there. And so it is this just contrast and juxtaposition of, man, like my life wasn't far off from what she did, or like
Mm-hmm.
what happened to her, and just like the detective having to sit with that and just think about her own life, was just like, man, like I want an entire episode that follows the cops. Like, don't even don't even show me Susan and Chris, but just all of the stuff that they're thinking, that they're struggling with, like all like I want to know that stuff. Because I think that would be just as fascinating.
Mm-hmm. A
Because I
character
mean,
I really. Hmm?
the last thing I was gonna say with the cops is that like, again, yeah, they have enough to. It really does seem that the Edwards are covering up a lot more
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than they are letting on, but it's still just like you don't know exactly, and I'm wondering like what the police is actually struggling with on like, well, I mean, he said he wasn't there at the scene, so how can we like, what are they actually struggling with to be like, hey, let's go with this plan? I would like to see more of that. But you were about to say.
Another supporting character I really liked was Susan's lawyer, Douglas. He's a very sweet character. He admits that he is over his head. He hasn't done this that many times. Seems like he hasn't been on a case that's this serious. And he's like trying to coach her in one method. Meanwhile, Chris has foregone any sort of legal representation and is just talking on his own. So while Chris is telling all these stories, Susan can't just keep being no comment, no comment, no comment. Like, they have to kind of be on the same page. Otherwise, like, the detectives are going to use everything Chris has to say against Susan. So Susan has to say something. And this poor lawyer is just like, no, Susan, you don't have to answer that. He's struggling, and he comes to care about Susan so much. And there's a really lovely conversation between the two of them in episode 4 where he's like, even if you have done something bad, Susan, far more bad things have happened to you, and I'm sorry that they happened to you, and I'm glad I got to know you.
Yeah.
It's so sweet, and it made me wonder, I'd be curious to learn how the research for the show was done. I'm sure that, this was a widely publicized case, it seems like. I'm sure there's a lot of newspapers, magazines, and news reports, etc. But for first-person accounts, I'm curious who it was that the production maybe got to talk to. I was trying to see if there's anybody who seemed like they were a point of view character who was telling the story to these show producers. I was like, did you talk to the Edwardses and then you're imagining what the detectives are up to? Or did you talk to the detectives and then you imagined things that maybe the Edwards experienced?
Right.
Did you talk to everybody? And that lawyer seemed like he may have been, I don't know, like that conversation he has with Susan at the end of the episode where he talks about how grateful he is that he's known her, made me wonder if maybe that was, he's very vibrant. You feel for that character a lot. And I wonder if he is somebody who the production got to talk to. And if this is a very true-to-life representation of somebody they interacted with.
This is a very recent case, is the thing.
Like, yeah.
The supposed the murder happened in 1998. But yeah, they covered it up for 15 years. And then I don't know exactly how long they were in the process of all the interrogation stuff and the trial and all that stuff. So it was what, like 2013, 2014 ish is when all of that was happening. So all of these people, I would assume, are still alive, and I'm sure they talk to all of them in some regard. But yeah, then it's just kind of a matter of like what the creators behind this took liberties on and stuff like that. Because that like you had said, that feels like a very true moment, that if they did get to talk to the lawyer, that he's being like, man, like they changed my life, like my whole outlook on life is now different. I can't say one way or another if they did it, but I'm glad that I met them and got to work with them.
So, this is a show that I think, this show is good at giving you sympathy for, I think, just about everybody in the cast who we see. Maybe not the parents. The parents were a rough crowd, but you have sympathy for the Edwardses, and you also have some sympathy for the detectives, for the prosecutors. Sometimes I felt like they were way harsher than they needed to be, but I also understand, these people murdered 2 people, buried them in their back garden, pretended like, oh, they just moved for like 10 years, ran away to another country. Like, I get it that you're like, these are criminals. Let's make sure they don't do a crime again. But yeah, you feel for everybody. It's very sympathetic, and it takes a lot of these very interesting creative liberties, which I think serve these sympathetic angles very well, makes you feel for all these characters. I've been thinking about the show's use of black and white, how at the beginning, the first couple episodes, black and white is used to represent flashbacks, to represent things that feel, in particular, things that feel very cinematic. Like you see Susan and Chris's first date. And it does have, it's not played up that much, but it is reminiscent of something like a very small slice of life romantic comedy, maybe.
Sure.
It's used to represent flashbacks and things that are very cinematic like that. And then the present day is in color. And then you get to the final episode where everything present day, everything in the trial is in black and white now. And then you see like flashbacks and this cowboy fantasy, and that's in color. And it's like the trial that they're in feels so, like you can imagine it's an out of body experience. They feel so distant and so cold. Like this is a time in our lives where there is no color. Color is streamed from this place. It feels like we're outside our bodies, like watching characters in a movie. This isn't us. Our fantasies and our memories, those feel more real now than what we are living right now.
Sure. Yeah. Or just the fact that like at the end of the day, like them being judged and sentenced is kind of a very black and white thing, right? Where it's just like you either did this or you did not. And we're here to decide that. Yeah. Whereas the outside world, or what they think is the outside world, right, is this more colorful, hopeful thing. Like there's that one scene, man, when they're doing the shootout in the trees and they pop the orange smoke, which who knows why they popped orange smoke, but then she comes like just marching out in the midst of that red smoke shooting. God, that looked awesome. It was like that's just a neat scene, and like but it's just so much more rich and vibrant than it's just like very boring, still black and white case, right? Like it's just stuck there. So interesting stuff. There's also so much detail in everything. It's wild.
There's a shot towards the beginning of episode 4, I think right before they go into the trial, that's just Susan sitting alone in her cell, and it is in like this sort of grainy like video quality, and there's a lighting rig over her. There's a camera unit sitting there. It's like she's still in that reenactment that they showed her in episode 3, where it felt like reality was breaking, that these detectives were so certain about, no, what you're telling us isn't the truth. We're going to tell you how we think the murder actually happened, and that that shakes her, makes her feel like what she is in isn't real, that broke her reality. So she's sitting there reflecting on herself in her cell alone, also in this broken reality. Or maybe she feels like, I don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm somebody I saw on TV. So I'm going to imagine myself with a lighting rig and a camera and like older video quality. You know, the sort of quality you'd see like, I don't know, an episode of Cops from like 1999.
Yeah. It's, man, it's one that doesn't necessarily leave me thinking, right? Of just like, I wonder what really happened. But it like, I'm still, the show is still sticking with me regardless. Just like, like I want to be in that setting more, if that makes sense. Like I want to be around the characters. I do want to check in now, like that now that they've been in jail for, I don't know how long, I guess a decade now, right? They've
no, I think it said maybe almost. It was 2015 when they were convicted, so it took her 7 years.
8 years ish, yeah. Like I would want to check in on them. Like how are they now? What is their mental state like now? Like does it change from westerns to a different genre that they're imagining themselves in, or Yeah, like I want an update. I want to spend more time with the detectives, more time with the lawyer. What cases has he picked up since then, and how has he approached those with
Mm-hmm.
these changes now, with him being so impacted by this case. Um, yeah, like I like the show for its brevity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's just chock full of all these really cool details and stuff that we've been discussing. But like, I also want to spread it out. I want more, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
I
the show.
feel like I keep repeating myself. I'm just like, I
No,
want
I get
more.
it.
Give me more.
I understand. Yeah, I don't know the background of this creative team, what they've done before, but I hope they do something else is impressive again, no matter what the genre is, what the technical style of it is. Yeah, this was a very well done story, and I like how it ends. Something that I found very effective about this show is that at the end of episode 1, Susan and Chris are separated. They are put in different holding cells. You don't see them together again, like in that time outside of fantasies and flashbacks. You don't see them together again until the trial, where they don't speak to each other. It's not clear if
Right.
like they're just overwhelmed, they don't know what to say, or they're not permitted to speak to each other. And at the end of that episode, you do see that they've been able to give each other notes to read, but they don't share a scene. They are not speaking to each other. They don't have a verbal conversation again after the end of episode 1. And the show leaves you in this really uncertain place. Uh, you don't know if how they are going to spend any time together after that. You don't know. It's like, well, are they allowed one visit a year, like within the fiction of the show and outside from a true
Right.
crime
Yeah.
legal perspective? You're like, are when they're both on the older side, it's like if they were connected for 25 years, are these two going to die and never see each other again? It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And the final scene of the show is, I think it's Susan reading a letter that Christopher has sent her that he signs Gerard Depardieu, kind of hinting that he knew the whole time that she was pretending to be Gerard Depardieu sending him letters. But it spills into this fantasy sequence where like the cell opens up and he's there and he takes her hand and they're on this like old time movie set. Like they're gonna be
Mm-hmm.
these Western heroes and they're out in this field and there's a director and a camera crew and makeup artists and also like an orchestra there playing their theme, and they get on the back of this horse and the final shot of the show is just them, like a grainy old black and white movie on the back of this horse, Susan the horse riding off together.
Yep. Yep. Riding off into the sunset, and yeah, mimicking what Susan had said she used to
Yeah.
imagine when she was a young girl, that there'd be this little tiny little horse on the top of the couch just riding along, and yeah, we see this like really really far away shot where the horse is just real small, just riding along on the edge of the horizon. Yeah, good ending. I enjoyed this one a lot. So,
Very touching.
indeed. Um, to be honest though, I don't know if I have much more to say on
Yeah.
this one. Like it's so packed full of little
Mm.
details that I think this merits a second viewing. But it's also, it's not the kind of movie or show that I feel like most people would go back and watch
Mm-hmm.
um a second time. So it's in this interesting like weird zone of just like, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I missed in here, or just like small metaphors or small things that they say or do.
Mm.
Because yeah, like we don't get to know much about the parents except for maybe the more abusive sides. But there is that one moment in when the cops are like being like, well, we think this is how it really happens, that you can see that those are actors just playing the
Yeah.
role there, and they're like, okay, yeah, you want me to stand here? And you're like, no, you're fine. Like, you want me to put the oxygen on? Like, no, you're good. Like, it's okay. Like, yeah, there's some smaller stuff in there that I think is easy to miss. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is like more stuff just buried in there.
Yeah.
So,
buried.
yeah, there you go. There you go. No landscaping though. I did not come out of this show knowing how to grow petunias. I don't know.
It is silly that I took it literally, but that is what I thought this show was, because the HBO Max just gives you like a 1-sentence description on that like splash page ad when you load up the app, and it's just there's David Thewlis and Olivia Colman holding each other in front of like a wall covered with a rose trellis, and it's like mild-mannered British couple hides a murder for 15 years or something, and you're wondering like what is the source of this murder? Why do they do it? Are these is this an accident of fate? Are they conniving for something? I like I said, I thought they were literal landscapers, and it was like, oh yes, we're just putting a pond in the backyard and bodies. No one will ever know. It's behind the water features and then the rhododendrons, right? No, that's just something somebody else can do than literal landscapers who are murderers and hide bodies in the landscape.
Yeah. I think the funniest moment in this show is when they first go to check out the house, which someone new lives there, and they're like, I just put my baby to sleep. I guess we could go out back if you wanted to do that. And they go out back, and then their next door neighbor is like outside too in his yard, but there's this big old fence, and he's just like, so what are you guys investigating? You don't see him, and you're just like, what is happening? And he's just like, oh yeah, that's my neighbor. He likes to speak to us like through the wall. And then he's like,
exactly,
come down here. And then they go down, and there's just like this little small hole that you can see his head in. He's like, hey, how you guys doing? Like, oh my god, it's like, what's his name like, from Home Improvements?
Just like with the detectives, there are aspects of life that you encounter in the show outside of the Edwardses themselves that feel like now we're just interrupting a BBC show already in progress. These are pre-established characters.
He's just out there like cooking some food. He's like, you guys want some? It's just the most mundane but just stupidest thing that's happening, and it's just like, what? Why is this happening in the midst of all of this? But yeah, it's good. It's so funny. God, what an interesting show.
You ready to move on to bingo?
Yeah, let me pull up bingo here, get that pulled up, and then switch us over to bingo. Here we are. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, you guys can see our bingo cards pulled up here. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, I have one that I think we could do. I would say a one-shot sequence when they're in the interrogation room and it switches the sets, all of that stuff. Let me see. Highlight. I'm supposed to.
I don't think I've got that one on my card this year, but I do have courtroom scene.
Ooh, let's see. Do I have courtroom scene? Know if I have a courtroom scene.
Oh, I do have one shot sequence. Yes. Down there.
So you have one shot and yeah, you have one shot. There's one shot. See that one. And then where do you have oh, there it is, courtroom scene. Boop doop doop. There we go.
I feel like this doesn't qualify for small-time detective in over their head. If only we had small-time lawyer in over their head.
Yeah, right. Man. Oh, I think I have another one here.
Uh-huh.
They bought flowers.
I
In the scene, in the one shot sequence, they enter the house of the parents with flowers.
Oh, yeah.
Go.
Is that
Go.
significant enough for they brought flowers?
Well,
Like the
it's not that
flowers
it's
appear, but it's not like a
it's
plot point.
my intention with that was not that it is a plot point. Um, but like I've seen shows where like for a certain character to get information, the information
Yeah.
broker is a flower seller, or a character is in the hospital and someone brings them flower. Like just it's basically just that, hey, someone bought flowers. It doesn't
I
have
was
to have
seeing
like a
it.
big plot significance of just like,
Okay.
oh my god, they bought flour. That means he's the real murderer.
I was seeing
Um,
it as like a moment of emotional significance, like, oh, that's touching that this person would want to bring you flowers for whatever reason. Or if it is like plot wise symbolic, like, yes, the flowers were a
it can
ruse,
be.
but just the
It
sheer
can be. Yeah,
appearance of anybody bringing anyone else a bouquet of flowers, we can cross this off.
I think so.
Okay, all right, I'll add
'Cause
that to
then
my copy.
you have that one on yours as well. They bought flowers. Boop doop doop. Okay, I think
Doing
that's
doing
all
good on
I
bingo so
have.
far. I've got a couple
Yeah,
spots where I've got like 3 in a row.
yeah, same. I almost have a diagonal one here.
Ooh.
I still need villain with a pet and character gets hit through a building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that's about it for bingo. So save that. And there we go. Bring us back to regular old podcast scene. Yeah. Cool. Um, now that we have that done, let's do recommended recommendations. Um, what might you recommend if people liked this?
If you'd like this, I definitely recommend Sherlock. It's not just also a British crime series, but it also has a very interesting use of visualization of metaphor.
Sure.
They will put literally there on screen what a character is imagining, and sometimes they use that to trick you. Like the use of visual metaphor itself is an unreliable narrator. You're looking at something and think it's literal, and then you find out, no, that was purely metaphorical. He was never
Yeah.
in that room. It's something that really
Indeed.
sticks with me about that show. Yeah. Another British show, The Night Manager. This is a crime drama, a bit of espionage in there, where Tom Hiddleston is the night manager at a fancy hotel, and his lover is killed, and it is something to do with Hugh Laurie playing this like millionaire and this like famed philanthropist who's secretly like funding terrorism. And Olivia Colman is the head of this small, scrappy, like anti-terrorism unit in MI6 that like nobody else in MI6 takes seriously.
Gotcha.
Because she's been ruthlessly pursuing only Hugh Laurie's character for years. But she sends Tom Hiddleston in undercover to infiltrate his inner circle and expose him. And
Cool.
I knew the basic premise of that show. I knew the lead actors that were in it. I did not know Olivia Colman was in it when I started watching it. And at the end of the thing, I think she was the best part of it. Her performance is great.
Good.
She's in it a lot. Yeah. And then again, if you like a movie that has a lot of interesting theatrical techniques to it, stuff you wouldn't normally see in a movie, The Personal History of David Copperfield, starring Dev Patel, came out about 2 years ago. that is some interesting sequences where it's like they are in a black box and it's just the characters and a couple set pieces in like a black room.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Visually
Good
a pretty
stuff.
cool movie. Check it out. Hugh Laurie's also in that.
I would recommend, this one's maybe a little bit more on the cerebral and trippy side, but I would recommend Paprika. It is an animated movie. I believe we covered it.
We did,
or was that me and Paul? Yeah, I believe we covered
you and
it
I
here
did.
on the review show. Let's see, it was episode 107 here on the review show. And yeah, it's a this like weird, like, what's a dream, what's reality, we don't know. But yeah, I just think that mixing of reality reminded me a lot of Paprika.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Where, like, the walls just fall away and they go over here and now they're actors in this scene. And it's some interesting stuff. I would also recommend Luther, which is an incredible crime drama starring Idris Elba. If you have not watched the show, go do yourself a favor and watch it because it is amazing. Yeah, I think those would be my recommendations. Some good British crime, and then some reality breaking animated movie.
I would also throw in Maniac if you're interested in the genre bending specifically. Maniac is a Netflix limited series about these people in an experimental drug trial, and the drugs put them under and make them have these hallucinations. And every episode's hallucination is like a specific genre or narrative style.
Yeah.
And when they break off and they're just in like a Lord of the Rings style fantasy for an episode or two, this Western fantasy reminded me of that a lot. Like, wow, you took this so seriously. This is so authentic to the genre. You got horses. You went out in the forest.
Good stuff. Yeah. Okay, so for next week, we are doing our first end of the month special on a manga called Knights of Sidonia. I do need to make a quick correction from what we said last week, and I think from when we first announced that we were doing this. We originally had said that we were rating the first 12 volumes over the next 2 months. It turns out that there's 12 volumes available on Comixology Unlimited, but there's 3 more volumes after that are not available on Comixology Unlimited. They're on Comixology, so it just means that we have to buy them. Which I was like, sure, I'll buy those last 3. That's fine with me. So that means we will be reading the series in its entirety, all 15 volumes. And that means for this next week, we are going to be reading the first 8 volumes. And then at the end of February, we will be discussing the final 7 volumes there. So that is what we will be up to this next week. The first 8 volumes of Knights of Sidonia.
Yeah. And then I've got my pitches ready for the week after that.
Sure. Let's hear them.
The first weekend of February will be the kickoff of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing.
Ooh.
So I thought I would get a series of Chinese movies because I don't think we've ever watched anything from China.
Sure.
Yeah. China is a large country. I think only one of these 3 movies actually takes place in Beijing. But it was tricky to find things that were easily accessible through our streaming platforms. Pitch number 1. This is a movie from the year 2000. You can find this on HBO Max. This is In the Mood for Love. In 1962, journalist Chow Mo-wan and his wife move into a Hong Kong apartment, but Chow's spouse is often away on business. Before long, the lonely Chow makes the acquaintance of the alluring Su Li-jin, whose own significant other also seems preoccupied with work. As the two friends realize their prospective partners are cheating on them, they begin to fall for one another. However, neither wants to stoop to the level of their unfaithful spouses. So this is a star-crossed lovers romantic drama.
Is this the one that stars I don't remember the actor's name, but he was in Shang-Chi, right?
Yes, Tony Leung, he's in this.
Dad from
Tony
Shang-Chi.
Leung and Maggie Cheung are our two leads. Yeah, this is a beautiful movie. I've seen clips from it before. It's just very rich, vibrant, saturated colors. The lady's always wearing these beautiful dresses of the time period of 1960s China. I've heard it's a sad one, but it seems like visually it's worth the experience.
Sure.
All right, pitch number 2. This is a movie from 1993. I think you can get this on Prime, but if you add like one of those extra subscriptions onto Prime, I don't know through which service, but I looked it up and it said Prime Premium subscription, so you might need to get a free trial to something. This movie is called Farewell, My Concubine. In 1924, young Chen Dai-yi begins training at the Beijing Opera House at the same time as Duan Zhaolu. Cheng specializes in playing female parts, often against Duan's commanding male leads. While pretending to be in love with Duan on stage, Cheng begins to develop actual romantic feelings for his co-star, which are not reciprocated. Over the next 50 years, the two men maintain a complicated friendship as China undergoes turbulent changes.
Interesting. Okay.
So we've got another star-crossed romance, perhaps fated not to be. The fact that it's got a musical origin between these two characters and they fall apart and reconnect over a long period of time kind of reminded me of Kids on the Slope. So I thought you might like this one.
Yeah.
And I know this one is definitely in Beijing. Don't know about the other ones. Pitch number 3. This movie's on Netflix and it came out just in 2019. This is The Wandering Earth. This is a huge sci-fi blockbuster from China. I think I read that it's been like one of the most successful movies in China. When the sun dies out, the people of Earth build giant thrusters to move the planet out of orbit and sail to a new star system. After 2,500 years, young people continue the fight for everyone's survival. Yeah. I was also thinking that particularly since we did The Matrix a couple weeks ago, I would stay away from martial arts action films. Because we already saw something in that vein pretty recently. So there's 2 romantic dramas and 1 let's make Earth a spaceship movie.
Oh man.
So your choices are
the sci-fi fan inside me is like, you should do the sci-fi one. Do that one. But it's also February and Valentine's Day is coming up in February. So I think I might go with one of the 2 romantic ones, or like ill-fated romances. I think I'm gonna go with In the Mood for Love.
Okay.
I think only because I'm familiar with the actor, the main actor in that one. I'm just like, oh, I've seen pictures of this. I've like heard the name. Like it was one of those things like when Shang-Chi came out, everyone was so impressed with all the actors and stuff like that. They were all like, what else have they all been in? So that was one I saw going around. So In the Mood for Love, we'll do that one in 2 weeks here. So
yeah, sounds good. That's the perfect thing to kick off February.
Yeah. Good stuff. So yeah, once again, this next week, the first 8 volumes of Knights of Sidonia, and then the week after that is where we will do In the Mood for Love. So good stuff. Alyssa, where can the people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, a show where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kids shows you feel like only you remember.
Go. You can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter. And if you guys want to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. So please go like, share, subscribe. You guys know the deal with all of that. Yeah. I believe that wraps us up for number 190 of the review show. We will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.